Welcome to Be Empowered, the podcast. This is a podcast where we dive into the realities of healthcare and entrepreneurship. We offer our opinion unfiltered, unapologetic, and always with a dose of empowerment. We are here to amplify voices, both yours and ours, challenge the status quo, and explore what it truly means to thrive. So let's get into it. So, in the past few episodes, we've talked about the toxicity of medical culture. We started with talking about toxicity as even a pre med, and then going into medical school. We talked about toxicity during medical training and how that translates into toxicity in attendingship. And today, we're going to talk a little bit about solutions. How do we fix this? Well, I think the key is acknowledging that this is a systemic problem. This is a systemic issue that is affecting healthcare as a whole. And there's a lot of power in collective action and advocacy. So I think one of the first steps to try to find a solution for the toxicity in medicine is holding people accountable. Leadership, administrators, each other. We really have to advocate for each other and speak up to support each other.
Yeah, exactly, Santoshi. So what you said, that this is a systemic problem, is a key, because the institutions wants to make it an individual problem, that it's you and it's not anybody else. And that happens especially when we are isolated, we're not supporting each other. So it's very important that you find your support group and you support the people who are whistleblowers, who are speaking up, who are advocating for your team, because that's the only way to move forward for a change.
There's this inherent thing that I've noticed now that I'm an attending, right? A lot of the times attendings tend to put their head down and not pay attention to anyone. For some reason, they feel like siding with administration is the right thing to do. I think in some ways they feel like if they do that, oh, they'll leave me alone, and I'm like the good doctor, I won't cause any issues. And if my colleague is advocating, is whistleblowing, is complaining, then I don't want to associate with that because they're going to put me in the same category of like bad apple. But the reality is we're full professionals. We worked so hard to get to this point. I don't think any of us are trying to be bad apples. Moreover, like we're not children. We keep saying that we're not children, but the way the language is used from the administrative standpoint, it almost makes it seem like we are children. We have to be disciplined. We have to be controlled. And if we aren't, then we're punished.
Some people even see it as a badge of honor. They're like, oh no, we're not associated with that person, or we're not associated with this group. We're separate from them, and they feel that if they don't stand up for their colleagues, then they're closer to the leadership, or they might get promoted or things like that. But in reality is that if that person gets promoted and they're not supportive of their colleagues and their team, they will run into problems. If their colleagues feel that they are they have not supported them in the past, then why would they support them then? So I think we have to look at the bigger picture. And the bigger picture is that as long as physicians don't support each other, don't advocate for each other, then change will not happen.
I agree with you on that one. I think I will even go as far as to say if you are someone who's a faculty member that stays close to administration and then gets promoted, once you are in the C-suite, once you are in a position of power, you stop associating with your colleagues. You just for some reason you forget that at one point you were one of us.
Right.
And I don't know what it is. It's like the doctor ego. Once you become an associate medical director, or if you become someone of some kind of power, right? And power in quotation marks, because is it really some kind of power, or are you still a monkey to the circus? Who knows? But once you get to that point, you become even more dismissive of what your colleagues are saying, knowing full and well that you've also experienced that.
Exactly. And one other solution that is key is also transparency in handling complaints and protecting the whistleblowers. So if you feel that you have a colleague that is being treated unfairly, stand up for them and ask for transparency. Get the other colleagues to to stand up as well and form a team, form a support team. So because next it could be you,
Exactly.
or then some people, they just kind of don't talk, don't say anything, and they just leave their jobs. Is that really what we want? Them switching from job to job? No, we want to fix things.
We have zero tolerance policies for harassment and bullying when it comes to patients, right? Like all hospitals have those signs up. But for some reason, that zero tolerance policy does not apply when it comes to us and administration and our own interpersonal relationships, I've noticed. And some people might not even realize they're being bullied or they're being harassed. Sometimes it's not very obvious, like you said in a prior episode, because it's not always like physical abuse or verbal abuse. A lot of gaslighting goes on and a lot of undermining, a lot of talking to you like you're not understanding, almost infantilizing you. I think that's the correct word. And I think that in itself is a form of harassment and bullying, taking you to HR, performance improvement plans, all of that.
Yeah, exactly. And I think a lot of people don't realize, those are kind of toxic work environment. And we talked about this in last episodes, exactly as you said. It's important to recognize it and understand it. Some of these behaviors are not normal in a workplace environment. And we do have zero tolerance policies towards the administrators and towards nurses, for example, towards APPs, for example. But I feel like this is not happening towards the physicians.
Yeah, we're almost like everybody's dog to kick, and I'm not quite sure why that happens. It's in training, it's almost like you're being hazed in a certain way where everything is dumped on you. And I think you just learn to take it as you become an attending and you're just learn to deal with it. I think when we speak with APPs and nurses, one thing that separates them from us is unions. We've talked about this offline as well. Imagine if we had a union where collectively physicians can come together and set boundaries or advocate for each other. I think the residencies are already doing that, and that's a good first step. But I think that's also needed more not worldwide, but nationwide, when it comes to physicians, so we can advocate for each other and support each other.
Definitely. One of my very good APP friends said that whenever her boss tells her something that doesn't make sense or asking for more, she basically gets the union involved, and they back off. It's amazing.
It's amazing. And I think the power of union is then you can also bargain for stuff that's important, right? Like, so in this case, we can also bargain for institutional changes. You can ask for GME reform for residency, limiting the hours that we're working and increasing the pay in residency because the amount of work we do and the amount we get paid does not align. It just does not make sense. On a broader sense, when you become an attending, having a union can help us argue for eliminating RVU based compensation models or even making addendums to the RVU based compensation models so physicians are being properly compensated, increasing mental health resources and removing the stigma from seeking mental health, redistributing workload. So there's a lot that can be done with the help of a union if we all just advocated and supported each other. The question is that ever going to happen? I don't know. What do you think?
I mean, I think there are physicians that are expressing more interest in forming a union. So it's happening, but I don't think that it's going to happen in the next, decade or so,
You
unfortunately.
think it'll happen by the time we retire?
I wish.
Who knows how much time we have left, right?
I
So,
know, exactly. Well, it depends. It depends on when we retire.
yeah, it does make me happy to see the younger generations doing it, though. The residents are unionizing, they're collectively bargaining. They're also leveraging social media for activism, which is what we're trying to do with this podcast. But I've
Yeah,
seen a lot of younger doctors post on TikTok, on Instagram, uh, their unions, their strikes, their work conditions. And I think that's really important because it also engages the general public who does not maybe see what's going on because why would they? They're not part of the system, they're on the other side. So they're seeing things one way. But if we can really explain to them, no, no, this is what's going on. Oh, they realize that we're all equally being screwed.
I think it's a surprise for them, honestly. I don't think
Hmm.
they knew, probably most of the stuff that we said in our previous podcast, including this one, is probably a surprise for the majority of the public. It's unfortunate they don't know, but that's why we're doing this.
Yeah, I mean, the role of patient advocacy, I think, is instrumental in reforming medicine. We need patients to advocate with us because collectively, again, we have a lot of power in all of our voices. We can't just be individualistic. And unfortunately, we've covered this in the prior episodes. Physicians are kind of bred to be individualistic, which is what makes this a little more difficult.
Right. I mean, there are some individual strategies that we can do also, especially the new trainees. Recognize the red flags from the beginning, early on, and set your professional boundaries. And that basically starts from residency and goes into attending. So that's why when you become an attending, it may not end. You just have to recognize the red flags and either negotiate for better work environment, or if you think that change is not happening, then move on, change your job. Unfortunately, some employers will not change, and so unless they have very high turnover rate, or unless they're forced to change, they're not going to change. So move on.
No, you have to move on. And what's really kind of silly about that is it takes so much money to replace a physician, right? So instead of trying to just hold on and making sure your staff is happy, like you said, some companies just aren't going to change. They would rather have that turnover, but in like the long scheme of it, they're actually losing money doing that. So I'm not quite sure why they're adopting that strategy, but that's none of my business. What pertains to us is recognizing the red flags early and setting those professional boundaries, like you said. A lot of people, when you come out of residency, you might not even recognize or you might not even know what red flags to look out for. I didn't. So I think a few of the things I would suggest you look out for is if you are in a job that's constantly overstepping your boundaries, like requiring you to work past the hours of whatever you're supposed to be working for. I think that definitely is a red flag. Another red flag is if you have a boss that's not open to feedback, where if you give feedback, they kind of either dismiss you or they treat you like you're the problem. Trust me, that red flag presents itself pretty early on. You can start spotting that. So that's one thing to look for. And the third thing I think is also seeing how many people are at the institution, that how long have they been there. If everyone that you're seeing is a new person and there's a very swift turnover, then I think that also is a red flag.
Right. And do your research. So when you
Hmm.
are looking for a job, do your research. Talk to a lot of people who work for that institution, and talk to multiple ones, not just the ones that they give you the phone numbers for, because likely they will give you the phone numbers for the ones that don't speak up and really kind of have tunnel vision and are happy with everything and anything. Try to find people who work for that institutions on LinkedIn and reach out to them and talk to them individually. You want to ask them key questions. So how does your boss treat you? Have you heard about somebody else being subjected to HR meetings? How do they take feedback? What is the patient load? So ask all these good questions.
You have to. And there's, like you said, don't just go to the people they point you towards. Right now, there's a lot of communities where you can ask too anonymously. There's some Facebook groups, some physician Facebook groups, Reddit forums. You can actually just ask, and people will tell you their experiences. So don't just rely on the contacts that the job is giving you. Ask your friends. They might know somebody else who was at that place, and has had a totally different experience. But like you said, we have to have these conversations. I think in the past there was a lot of taboo, like, oh, we don't discuss compensation, we don't discuss these things. You just put your head down and go. But now more and more physicians are asking questions, and I think that's very important.
And talking about compensation, it's very important that from the beginning, negotiate. Don't if Even if they say this is not negotiable, everything is negotiable. So
Mm-hmm.
still negotiate. And if they don't negotiate with you, if they don't compromise on anything, that's already a red flag. Okay. I would say that's already a red flag.
Yep. And when you're about to sign a contract, get a lawyer to look over it. I mean, my very first contract was very easy. So I had a friend who was a lawyer look over it and my dad look over it, who's very good at reading legal documents. But I think if you are someone who does not have, a resource, someone who can look over your contract for you, and I would go as far as to say, even if you do have that resource, just spend the additional money and go to a contract lawyer because they're going to point out things that, your friend might not be able to point out. But a good contract lawyer will really save your butt in the long run if the contract is bad, because there's nothing worse than being stuck in a really, really bad contract.
If you're experiencing harassment in your work, gaslighting, being subjected to HR meetings and PIPs unnecessarily, get legal counsel. Because again, they might say something that you didn't know. Um, it's better to protect yourself and get legal counsel to see what options are there for you.
Yep. Keep your documentation and get legal counsel. It's never going to hurt. What I will say is a lot of companies will want to involve HR. And what I've learned in my time of practice is HR is there to protect the company. So I think definitely during meetings, HR can be involved, sure. But I wouldn't go to them as like the first step. I would get my own legal counsel to see what they would advise.
Right. Yeah. HR is there to protect the company, to protect the leadership. So that's why I don't think that HR, don't be surprised if HR is not on your side. They might be, they might seem that they are on your side. They might say the correct things for you to think that they are on your side, but ultimately they are on the leadership side. So you might want to get your legal counsel separately.
And other things that you can do if this company just isn't for you and you have to walk away, or you feel like you're getting really burned out in the current patient care model, is to explore alternative career paths, which is, Shala and I both have done this. For some people, leaving an institution and starting their own private practice has been rewarding. It is a lot of time and effort, but we have friends within our group who have been able to do that and they're happy doing it. You could do consulting. It's a little hard to get into consulting as a physician, but that's a possibility. Telemedicine is also an option. There are also some non clinical jobs that are available as well. And we're actually going to have one of our friends and colleagues come on in a later episode to discuss those. But basically, there are a variety of options. If you feel like your mental health is spiraling, then I think prioritizing mental health and self care is going to be important. And to do that, I think you'll need to take a step back and see what it means for you to be happy at your job.
Right. And join organizations pushing for reform, like physician support lines, AMA, organizations just like Empowermedlife, podcasts that what similar to what we are doing. Um, and also don't underestimate the power of networking. Have a strong support system that helps you navigate workplace challenges, and especially good friends, good colleagues that maybe some who are more experienced than you, but reach out.
And the AMA, I will say this, a lot of physicians have like a love hate or a hate relationship with the AMA because their advocacy has not been great. But that is the only advocacy as a group that we currently have. And I do wonder if we all kind of speak up, we could transform the AMA to be something that does advocate more efficiently or more effectively for us as physicians.
I agree. Yeah, it hasn't been as advocative as it should be, and hopefully that changes too with the new generation.
Right. So if you guys, have anything else in mind as the audience, feel free to, send us your stories, post about this, give us some of the things that you've learned in your job search or in your early jobs on how to kind of find how you've worked to find solutions for yourself in these situations. Our email address is empowermedlife@gmail.com. We're on Instagram, we're on LinkedIn. It's all one word, lowercase, empowermedlife. But yeah, I mean, it would be really helpful to hear maybe some of your stories, how you navigated them, and it might even be helpful for us in order to, come up with future topic suggestions for this podcast.
Exactly. Can you share a story, Santoshi, on something like this, on how you navigated through it?
Sure. Yeah. So just to give an example, I mean, I again could talk about this forever, but I'll keep it brief. I was in an academic hospital for about 5 years right out of fellowship, and all of my training was academic, so I thought I was going to stay academic forever. I got exceptionally burnt out in academics and decided to make a change. It was either, you deal with it or you make a change. There was no alternative. So for me, I made a change. I left without really a plan. And I decided to go full-time locums, which sounds a little crazy, but at that time I was like, even if I'm not working, I don't care. I just need to leave this situation. Luckily, that has worked out for me. Now I do locums full time. I also do some telemedicine. I do some consulting on the side. I do some non-clinical work. So now I technically have about 4 or 5 jobs, but I'm able to schedule them in a way where it's flexible for my life, so I can spend time with my family, and I can also have vacation time off without feeling bad. I can have some weekends off without feeling bad. So that's kind of how I found the solution for that problem for myself. That's not to say that's for everybody, but at this point, I can confidently say that my mental health is so much better. How about you, Shala?
That's great to hear. Yeah, similar to you, and I said this before, that out of fellowship, I didn't really explore my options, and I just kind of took the first one on the table. I left a lot on the table, and I was, um, very enthusiastic about that job, and I was promised kind of, growth and this and that, but it didn't happen. So once I recognized the red flags, I also started diversifying, and I kind of reduced my hours in that job, and I started basically taking other jobs elsewhere. It's better for me. I found diversifying is a good solution for me, reducing my hours and in a job that was stressful for me. Um, and I can spend some more time with family. My hours are more flexible now. I can travel. I can do whatever I want. And then the other thing is that we started this podcast and we started
Mhm.
Empowermedlife, which has been a tremendous joy for me to do this.
Yeah, I 100%. I feel like because I've been able to set those boundaries, I can make more time for things that matter. Again, like you said, family, passion projects such as this. And, at the end of the day, life is too short to be miserable. So if you are in a job that's miserable, there are avenues to make change. And part of why we started this podcast is so people can find joy in their jobs again as healthcare workers, because we've worked so hard to get to this point. It just, the toxicity, it can't overwhelm you, it can't take over your life.
Yeah, because the job itself is stressful, and then on top of that, if you have an unsupportive environment and a toxic work environment, it adds up significantly.
Exactly. So I think we can wrap it up there unless there's anything else you want to add.
No, that's great. I think these 4 episodes are going to be very helpful, I hope. And we'll talk about this even more, because this is a very challenging topic. Tuning into Be Empowered, the podcast. If you enjoyed this conversation, don't forget to subscribe, leave a review, rate this podcast, and share it with someone who needs it. So stay strong, stay empowered, and we'll see you next time.